Opening the Sutra. The unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rarely encountered, even in countless kalpas. Now that I can see, hear, receive, and uphold it, may I understand the true meaning of the Tathagata.
The four vast vows. Sentient beings are boundless, I vow to liberate them all. Afflictions are inexhaustible, I vow to uproot them all. Dharma doors are limitless, I vow to master them all. The Buddha way is supreme, I vow to realize it. The Diamond Sutra. The reasons for the Dharma assembly. 1. Thus I have heard. Once upon a time, the Buddha sojourned in the Jetavana park near Sravasti with an assembly of 1,250 bhiksus. One day, at mealtime, the world-honored one put on his robe, took his bowl, and entered the great town of Sravasti to beg for his food. He had begged from door to door, he returned to his place. When he had taken his meal, he put away his robe and bowl, washed his feet, arranged his seat and sat down. I am Nanda, one of the Buddha's principal disciples. This Diamond Sutra, Vajracchedika-Prajna-Paramita, was spoken by the Buddha himself, and I, Ananda, one of his chief disciples, personally heard it. Unfortunately, the Buddha has already passed into parinirvana, so future generations will no longer be able to hear his teachings directly. To allow later generations to know the Dharma, I, Ananda, have once again recited it so that it may be recorded and passed down. I remember when the Buddha was teaching this sutra, it was in the northwest of India, in a kingdom called Ravast. Near the royal palace of Ravast there was a garden named Jetavana Anthapiada Grove. Why was it called this? Because the trees in the garden were donated by Prince Jetaka, so it was called Jetavana, Jeta's Grove. The land was donated by a minister of King Prasenajit named Anthapiada Sudatta, who was known for his generosity and frequently helped those who were lonely or destitute. Thus the garden was called the Anthapiada Grove, the giving to the lonely grove. Combining the two, the garden was named Jetavana Anthapiada Grove. It was here that the Buddha delivered this sutra. At that time, there were about 1,250 people living together with the Buddha. Renunciants who were very accomplished in their practice, some had even attained the status of arhatship or the status of bodhisattva. I recall that on the morning of the day when the sutra was taught, Shakyamuni Buddha noticed that it was nearly noon, so he put on his robe, took his alms bowl, and went to the great city of Ravast to collect alms. He went door to door, regardless of whether the household was rich or poor. After collecting alms, he returned to his original place to eat. After finishing the meal, he packed up his robe, bowl, and some daily use utensils, washed his feet clean, and then laid out his seat to sit down. Subhuti's request. 2. At the time, the elder Subhuti, who was in the assembly, rose from his seat, uncovered his right shoulder, knelt upon his right knee, respectfully joined the palms of his hands and said to the Buddha, "It is very rare, world-honored one. How well the Tathagata protects and thinks of all bodhisattvas. How well he instructs all the bodhisattvas. World-honored one. When virtuous men or women develop the supreme enlightenment mind, how should their minds abide and how should they be subdued?" The Buddha said, "Excellent, excellent, Subhuti. As you say, the Tathagata protects, cherishes, and instructs bodhisattvas so well. Now listen attentively, and I will tell you how the minds of virtuous men and women, who develop the supreme enlightenment mind, should thus abide and be subdued." Subhuti replied, "Oh yes, world-honored one, I shall be glad to hear your instruction."
At that time, a senior and virtuous disciple of the Buddha, named Subhuti, suddenly stood up from the assembly. He donned his robe, leaving his right shoulder bare, he knelt down on his right knee. With hands joined respectfully, he bowed to the Buddha and then praised, saying, "You are the most rare and precious world-honored one. You often concern yourself with how the bodhisattvas practice, and frequently admonish them to take up the task of liberating sentient beings. World-honored one. But the minds of sentient beings are very fragile. How can the good men and women who aspire to practice, when they generate the Bodhi mind aiming for supreme, perfect enlightenment, prevent it from declining? And how can they subdue the deluded thoughts so that no distracting thoughts arise?" The Buddha replied, "Excellent question. Excellent question, Subhuti. Just as you said, I often concern myself with how bodhisattvas practice and frequently admonish them to take responsibility for liberating sentient beings. Therefore, I must explain to you clearly, listen carefully, I now give you the teaching. When good men and women who have generated the Bodhi mind aiming for supreme, perfect enlightenment, their mind is no different from that of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Hence, they should not let it decline, and if deluded thoughts arise, they should not give rise to them." Subhuti, upon hearing the Buddha's explanation, said, "Yes, world-honored one. I am very glad to hear your teaching."
The orthodox doctrine of the Great Vehicle. 3. The Buddha said, "Subhuti, all bodhisattvas and mahasattvas should subdue their minds as follows: all living beings born from eggs, wombs, humidity, or by transformation with or without form, either thoughtful or thoughtless, and neither thoughtful nor thoughtless, are all led by me to the final nirvana for the extinction of reincarnation. Although immeasurable, uncountable and unlimitable numbers of living beings are thus led to the final nirvana for the extinction of reincarnation, it is true that not a living being is led there. Why so, Subhuti? Because if a bodhisattva still clings to the false notion, laksana, of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, he is not a true bodhisattva."
The Buddha then said to Subhuti, Great bodhisattvas, in their cultivation, should subdue the deluded mind according to the following method. To subdue the deluded mind, the first step is not to cling to the concept of sentient beings. There are 9 types of sentient beings. 1. Those born from eggs, such as chickens, ducks, sparrows, and pigeons. 2. Those born from wombs, such as humans, cows, sheep, and horses. 3. Those born from moisture or water, such as fish, shrimp, crabs, and soft-bodied creatures. 4. Those born from transformation, such as insects, moths, mosquitoes, and flies, which transform from larvae. 5. Beings with form, rupa beings, who are composed of the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. These beings dwell in the desire realm and the form realm. 6. Formless beings, who are composed of the 4 aggregates, excluding form, and dwell in the formless realm. 7. Beings with thought, which includes all beings in the 3 realms, desire, form, and formless, except for those in the unconscious heavens. 8. Beings without thought, such as non-Buddhist practitioners who cultivate the state of no thought, and dwell in the formless unconscious heavens, the highest attainment of non-Buddhist practice. 9. Beings who are neither with thought nor without thought, who dwell in the highest level of the formless realm, in the heaven of neither perception nor non-perception. These beings have no coarse thoughts, but still possess subtle mental activity. All great bodhisattvas should hold this vow. I will compassionately rescue all these beings one by one, helping them eliminate their karmic obstacles, escape the cycle of birth and death, and ultimately reach the state of pure liberation. Even though the number of sentient beings is infinite, beyond measure or boundary, I vow to liberate them all with a compassionate heart. Yet, despite having liberated countless beings, I will not become attached to the merit of delivering them. Therefore, within the mind of every bodhisattva, there should be the understanding that not a single being has truly been saved by me. Why should one think this way, Subhuti? Because if a bodhisattva still clings to the concepts of a self, a person, a sentient being, or a lifespan, then he is not a true bodhisattva. The self is the egoistic mind, attached to the notion of I. The person is the comparative mind, concerned with gain and loss. Sentient beings represent the discriminating mind, filled with distracting thoughts. Longevity symbolizes the desirous mind, craving for life itself.
Wonderful practice is to not rely on anything. 4. Furthermore, Subhuti, a bodhisattva's mind should not abide anywhere when giving alms. That is to say, he should give without a mind abiding in form. Or he should give without a mind abiding in sound, or in smell, or in taste, or in touch, or in things Subhuti. Thus a bodhisattva should give alms without a mind abiding in false notions of form, laksana. Why? Because if a bodhisattva's mind does not abide in forms, laksanas, when practicing charity, dana, his merit will be inconceivable and immeasurable. Subhuti, what do you think? Can you think of and measure the extent of space in the East? I cannot, world-honored one. Subhuti, can you think of and measure all the extent of space in the south, west and north, as well as in the intermediate directions, including the zenith and nadir? I cannot, world-honored one. Subhuti, when a bodhisattva practices charity without a mind abiding in forms, his merit is equally inconceivable and immeasurable. Subhuti, a bodhisattva's mind should thus abide as taught.
The Buddha continued speaking to Subhuti. Let me tell you more, Subhuti. To be a great bodhisattva, one must have a vast and boundless mind. Only with such a heart can one be free from calculating or being petty. When free from such calculations, one can truly engage in acts that benefit sentient beings. And even after doing such acts of benefit, one must not be attached to them. For example, one should not crave beautiful sights, only then can the eye faculty remain pure. One should not indulge in seductive music, only then can the ear faculty remain pure. One should not be attached to strong or pleasant fragrances, only then can the nose faculty remain pure. One should not crave delicious food, only then can the tongue faculty remain pure. One should not desire luxurious clothing, only then can the body faculty remain pure. One should not be greedy for material pleasures, only then can the mind faculty remain pure. Subhuti, a great bodhisattva must be able to forget whom they gave to, how much they gave, and must not seek fame, personal gain, or praise from giving. Why must a bodhisattva's giving reach this level? Because only then can the mind be truly vast and expansive. And only when giving arises from such vastness can one's merit and virtue grow, ultimately becoming immeasurable. Subhuti, what do you think? Can you imagine or measure the size of the empty space in the East? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one, I cannot. The Buddha continued, Subhuti, what about the space in the south, west, north, southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest, above and below? Can you grasp or measure it? Subhuti again replied, No, world-honored one, I cannot. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva practices giving without attachment to appearances, the merit they generate is as vast as space, immeasurable and inconceivable. Subhuti, therefore, all great bodhisattvas should simply follow my teachings. Give without attachment to form or appearance.
Genuine discernment of the principle of suchness. 5. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be seen by means of his bodily form? No, world-honored one, the Tathagata cannot be seen by means of his bodily form. Why? Because when the Tathagata speaks of bodily form, it is not real form. The Buddha said to Subhuti, everything with form is unreal. If all forms are seen as unreal, the Tathagata will be perceived.
The Buddha said, Subhuti, what do you think? Can one view the Tathagata, the Buddha, with ordinary worldly eyes? Subhuti answered, That's impossible, world-honored one. One cannot perceive the Tathagata with worldly eyes. Why? Because the physical body of the Buddha, as you described, is only a temporary appearance, not the true essence of the Buddha. The true body of the Buddha is formless and beyond physical features. It cannot be seen with the naked eye. The Buddha then said, "You are right. Everything in this world that has form is unreal. All forms are subject to decay and change. If people become attached to what they see, they deceive themselves with illusions. Only when one is not attached to illusory appearances, and is not misled by external forms, can one be truly awakened. Such an awakened person lives in clarity and freedom. Even if they have not seen the physical body of the Buddha, they have already realized the Buddha's true nature, because the Buddha lives in their heart, and their mind is one with the Buddha's mind."
Proper faith is rare. 6. Subhuti said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, will there be living beings who can develop a true belief in these words, sentences, and chapters when they are expounded to them?" The Buddha said, "Subhuti, do not speak like that. In the last 500 years, before the final passing of the Tathagata, there will be those who will observe the rules of morality and perform good actions which will result in blessing. These people will be able to develop a faith in these sentences, which they will consider as embodying the truth. You should know that they will not have planted good roots in just 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 Buddha lands. They will have planted them in countless thousands and tens of thousands of Buddha lands. Upon hearing these sentences, there will arise in them a single thought of pure faith. Subhuti, the Tathagata knows and sees all. These living beings will thus acquire immeasurable merits. Why? Because they will have wiped out false notions of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, of Dharma and not Dharma. Why? Because if their minds grasp form, laksana, they will still cling to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. If their minds grasp the Dharma, they will still cling to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. Why? Because if their minds grasp the not Dharma, they will still cling to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. Therefore, one should not grasp and hold on to the notion of Dharma, as well as that of not Dharma. This is why the Tathagata always said, "Ye bhikkhus should know that the Dharma I expound is likened to a raft." Even the Dharma should be cast aside, how much more so the not Dharma?
After hearing this, Subhuti again said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, what you have just said is truly wonderful. As I listened, I felt a deep sense of truth and clarity. But sentient beings have limited wisdom and are plagued by doubt. Will they really believe what you have taught?" The Buddha replied, "Subhuti, you need not worry. Though the Dharma I speak is profound and subtle, there will still be those who believe in it with unwavering faith. Even after my parinirvana, passing into final nirvana, during the following stages: 1,000 years of the proper Dharma period, 1,000 years of the semblance Dharma period, and 500 years of the degenerate Dharma period, altogether spanning 2,500 years. There will still be good men and good women who uphold the precepts, cultivate fields of merit, and have deep faith in what I now teach. These people who believe my words now are very rare and special. They have not only planted good roots under the Buddhas of recent times, but also under countless Buddhas in past lives. So when they hear even a single sentence or read even a short passage, their minds can immediately become calm, focused, and unwavering in faith. Subhuti, let me tell you this. In the future, I will surely know and see all those who maintain unshakable faith. They, these good men and women, will receive immeasurable blessings and merits from the 10 directions of space. Why is that so? Because such people do not cling to the notions of self, ego, person, dualities, being, discrimination, or lifespan, attachment to longevity. Moreover, they do not attach to the names and concepts of all dharmas, phenomena. So one should neither cling to all dharmas, nor to the concept of emptiness. Why? Because the moment a person clings to the name and form of dharmas, they are also clinging to the notions of self, person, being, and lifespan. Likewise, clinging to the names and forms of emptiness is no different. It is still clinging to the self, person, being, and lifespan. Therefore, do not attach to any dharma, and do not attach to emptiness either. That is why, when I teach the Dharma to you, I often use the raft analogy. Just as people make a raft out of bamboo to cross a river, once they reach the other shore, they leave the raft behind. The Dharma I speak is like that raft. It is meant to ferry you across, not to be clung to. So how much more should you avoid becoming attached to anything that is not even part of the true Dharma?
Nothing attained, nothing spoken. 7. Subhuti, what do you think? Has the Tathagata in fact obtained supreme enlightenment anabodhi? Does the Tathagata in fact expound the Dharma? Subhuti replied. As I understand the meaning of the Buddha's teaching, there is no fixed Dharma called supreme enlightenment. And there is also no fixed Dharma the Tathagata can expound. Why? Because the Dharma the Tathagata expounds cannot be clung to and cannot be expressed in words. It is neither Dharma nor not Dharma. Why is this? All Bodhras and Aryas differ on account of the eternal asamskata Dharma.
The Buddha asked, Subhuti, what do you think? Have I attained the supreme, unsurpassed, perfectly awakened enlightenment? Have I actually taught any Dharma? After hearing this, Subhuti replied, World-honored one, based on my understanding and realization, there is no fixed name or concept that can truly be called supreme, unsurpassed enlightenment. because the teachings of the Dharma are spoken only for the sake of sentient beings. Even the idea of enlightenment is something said for the benefit of sentient beings. In the world of the Buddha, what fixed stage of enlightenment could there possibly be? Likewise, there is no fixed Dharma that the Buddha can teach, because all that the Buddha teaches is based on the varying capacities and dispositions of beings. The Dharma spoken by the Buddha is like space, unchanging and vast. Yet space cannot be grasped or possessed. Its boundlessness and constancy are beyond words. So, what the Buddha teaches both exists and does not exist. What does not exist also seems to exist. Take space, for example. Space has always existed, yet deluded beings often overlook it. In the same way, the Dharma is already present in daily life, but people fail to recognize it. They mistakenly believe the Dharma is not universal, not relevant. These are simply the views of confused and rejecting minds. Why is this so? Because all beings, whether ordinary people, virtuous people, or sages, differ in how they realize the Dharma of non-action. Sages see mountains as mountains, but do not attach to them. They have reached the state of acting freely without transgressing. Virtuous people see mountains as not mountains. They are cautious of desire and self-interest, so they reject all external appearances and conditions. Ordinary people see mountains as mountains, but they cling to them, full of greed and constant attachment to things outside themselves, leading to conflict. Thus, the distinction between ordinary people, the virtuous, and the sages lies in this: the difference between clinging to conditioned phenomena and realizing unconditioned reality.
They arise from Dharma. 8. Subhuti, what do you think? If someone filled the universe with the 7 treasures and gave them all as alms, would his merit be great? Subhuti replied, very great, world-honored one. Why? Because this merit is not the nature of merit. The Tathagata says it is great. Subhuti, if on the other hand, someone received and kept even a 4-line stanza of this sutra, and expounded it to others, his merit would surpass that. Why? Because, Subhuti, all Buddhas and their supreme enlightenment Dharma originate from this sutra. Subhuti, the so-called Buddhas and Dharmas are not real Buddhas and Dharmas.
After hearing Subhuti's words, the Buddha said, Subhuti, what do you think? If someone were to fill the 3,000 great thousand worlds with the 7 precious jewels and offer them all as a gift of charity, would the merit they gain be great? Subhuti replied, indeed, world-honored one, the merit would be vast. However, although vast, it would still be limited merit, not infinite. True immeasurable merit comes only from non-attached giving, that is, giving without being concerned about how much one gives, to whom one gives, and without seeking anything in return. In contrast, attached giving, When one constantly thinks about how much was given, to whom it was given, and expects returns, only leads to limited merit. So, world-honored one, even though you say that offering the 7 treasures would bring great blessings, it is still just limited in measure. The Buddha, upon hearing this, solemnly replied, Subhuti, if someone were to recite this Diamond Sutra daily, or even memorize and practice just 4 verses from it, such as all conditioned phenomena are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, or shadows, like dew or lightning, you should view them thus. If one sees me in form, or seeks me in sound, that person walks the wrong path. They cannot truly see the Tathagata. All appearances are illusory. If one sees all appearances as non-appearances, then one truly sees the Tathagata, and teaches these truths to others. Then the merit they gain would far surpass the merit of giving away 7 treasures filling the 3,000 great thousand worlds. Why is that so? Because sharing the Dharma is a form of Dharma giving, which is the highest among the 3 kinds of giving: Dharma giving, material giving, and fearlessness giving. And among all teachings, the Diamond Sutra holds supreme, immeasurable merit. Why is this sutra's merit so vast and infinite, Subhuti? Let me speak plainly. In the past, all great bodhisattvas who ultimately attained Buddhahood, right at the final stage of their enlightenment, awakened through this sutra. That is why this sutra can be called the father of Buddhas, the mother of all dharmas. This is no exaggeration, it is truly so. Subhuti, all conditioned dharmas are merely skillful means, tools to help sentient beings reach the other shore of liberation. Only the Dharma I now speak, this Diamond Sutra, is the true Dharma. Yet, even as I speak this true Dharma to you, you must not become attached to it. Why? Because the very Dharma that awakens you, once it has done so, is no longer needed. Thus, what is called the Buddha Dharma is spoken only for the sake of deluded beings. In the Buddha's own realm of realization, there is no need for any Dharma at all.
The one appearance is beyond appearances. 9. Subhuti, what do you think? Can one who has entered the stream, Srotrapanna, have this thought in his mind? I have obtained the status of entering the stream? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Why? Because Srotrapanna means entering the stream. But actually there is no entry into either form, sound, smell, taste, touch or Dharma. Therefore, he is called Srotrapanna. Subhuti, what do you think? Can a Sakadagamin have this thought, I have obtained the status of a Sakadagamin? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Why? Because Sakadagamin means once more to come. But actually there is neither coming nor going. Therefore, he is called a Sakadagamin. Subhuti, what do you think? Can an Anagamin have this thought? I have obtained the fruit of an Anagamin? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Why? Because anagamin means no coming, but actually there is no such a thing as no coming. Therefore, he is called an anagamin. Subhuti, what do you think? Can an arhat have this thought in his mind? I have obtained the enlightenment of an arhat? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Why? Because there is no Dharma which is called arhatship. World-honored one. If an arhat thinks I have obtained the enlightenment of an arhat, he will still grasp and hold on to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. World-honored one. The Buddha has declared that I have obtained the passionless samadhi and that I surpass all men. I am, therefore, the highest passionless arhat. World-honored one. I do not think I am a passionless arhat. World-honored one, if I had thought I have attained arhatship, the world-honored one would not have said, Subhuti takes delight in the calm and quiet, free from temptation and distress. The fact that Subhuti does not act mentally is called the calm and quiet in which Subhuti takes delight.
The Buddha then asked, Subhuti, what do you think? Would a person who has attained the status of Sotapanna think to himself, I have attained the status of Sotapanna? Sotapanna refers to a noble being who has attained the first stage of enlightenment. The term Sotapanna is a direct transliteration from ancient Indian language, Pali Sanskrit, and in Chinese, it is translated as entering the stream, meaning one who is beginning to enter the path of sainthood. Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Why not? Because although one who has attained the status of Sotapanna is said to have entered the stream of sainthood, this is merely a conventional label. In truth, when one attains that stage, the mind enters nothing at all. Why does the mind enter nothing? Because such a saint no longer clings to beautiful sights, pleasing sounds, fragrant smells, delicious tastes, or smooth touches. They are not attached to any appearances or forms. Therefore, the term Sotapanna is just a name without real substance. The Buddha continued, Subhuti, what do you think? Would a person who has attained the status of Sakadagamin have the thought, I have attained the status of Sakadagamin? Sakadagami refers to a noble being who has attained the second stage of enlightenment. In Chinese, it is translated as once returner, meaning one who still needs to return to the human world one more time to complete their final stage of cultivation. Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Although such a practitioner may still need to return once more to the human realm to complete their cultivation, hence the name once returner, in reality, they have no thoughts of returning or going at all. If they still had such thoughts, that would be attachment. But a true Sakadagamin has already transcended attachment, and that is why they are called Sakadagamin. The Buddha asked again, Subhuti, what do you think? Would a person who has attained the status of anagaman think, I have attained the status of anagaman? Anagami refers to a noble being who has attained the third stage of enlightenment. In Chinese, it is translated as non-returner, meaning one who will no longer be reborn in the human world of the desire realm. However, they still need to continue their cultivation in the form realm, or the formless realm of the heavens before attaining the fourth and final stage, arhatship, arahant. Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Even though such a person will no longer return to the realm of desire or the human world for rebirth, they have already transcended the notions of coming and going, and even the distinction between coming and going. That's why they are called anagaman, non-returner. The Buddha then asked, Subhuti, what do you think? Would a person who has attained the status of arhat think, I have attained the arhat status? Arhat refers to a noble being who has attained the fourth and final stage of enlightenment. In Chinese, the term has three meanings. 1. Worthy of offerings. One who is deserving of offerings from the world. 2. Enemy destroyer. One who has destroyed all the inner enemies of defilements and afflictions. 3. No more rebirth. One who will no longer be reborn within the three realms of existence, desire, form, and formless realms. Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Why not? Because an arhat is a sage of non-learning, unlike the stream enterer, once-returner, and non-returner, who are still in stages of learning. An arhat has completed all learning in the Sravaka path. World-honored one. If a noble one who has attained the fruit of arhatship were to have the thought, I have attained arhatship, then he would still be attached to the concept of self, others, sentient beings, and a lifespan. How then could he truly be called an arhat? World-honored one, you once said that I, Subhuti, have attained a state of cultivation free from duality, discrimination, and attachment, with a mind that is calm, natural, and in right concentration. You praised me among all disciples, as being the foremost in understanding emptiness, the most accomplished in renunciation, and the highest among arhats. World-honored one, though you have praised me, I have always practiced in silence, never once entertaining the thought that I have attained arhatship. If I had such a thought in my heart, clinging to it, then you would not have called me one who loves solitude. It is precisely because my heart is without gain and without loss, free from all attachment, acting without acting, doing without doing, seeking nothing and desiring nothing, that I am called a solitary practitioner. If I were to cling to any status of attainment in my mind, then I would no longer be a true solitary cultivator.
Adorning Pure Lands. 10. The Buddha said to Subhuti, What do you think? Did the Tathagata obtain anything from Dharma when in the past he was with Dipankara Buddha? No, world-honored one. When the Tathagata was with Dipankara, he did not obtain anything from the Dharma. Subhuti, what do you think? Do bodhisattvas adorn Buddha lands by their moral actions? No. World-honored one. Why? Because this is not real adornment, it is merely called the adornment of Buddha lands. Subhuti, this is why all bodhisattvas and mahasattvas should thus develop a pure and clean mind, which should not abide in form, sound, smell, taste, touch and dharma. They should develop a mind which does not abide in anything. Subhuti, supposing a man has a body as great as Mount Sumeru, what do you think? Would such a body be great? Subhuti replied. Very great, world-honored one. Because the Buddha says it is not the real body but is merely called a great body.
The Buddha again said to Subhuti, Subhuti, what do you think? When I was with the Buddha Dipankara, did I attain anything? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. You truly did not attain anything at all from Dipankara Buddha. Why is that? Because where there is attainment, there is also the possibility of loss. A mind caught up in gain and loss cannot realize Buddhahood. Therefore, according to true understanding, you did not attain anything. The Buddha then asked, Subhuti, what do you think? Do bodhisattvas adorn pure Buddha lands? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Why not? Because bodhisattvas cultivate without attachment in their hearts, and it is from this unattached heart that adornment arises. Ordinary beings, however, give rise to defilement due to craving and attachment. Thus, although bodhisattvas do indeed adorn pure Buddha lands, they do so without clinging, not even to the thought of adornment itself. Adornments are merely provisional names, not ultimate realities. The Buddha responded, Yes, exactly so. That is why, Subhuti, you should understand that all great bodhisattvas should cultivate in the way just described, without clinging in their minds. Only in this way can they achieve a state of undisturbed concentration and give rise to a pure heart. That is, they should not be attached to beautiful objects, not be attached to seductive music, not be attached to rich and fragrant aromas, not be attached to delicious foods, not be attached to luxurious clothing, nor to the enjoyment of material comforts. Only by not clinging to anything at all can the heart remain truly pure. Subhuti, suppose there were a person whose body was as enormous as Mount Sumeru, the king of all mountains, which stands 3,360,000 li, equals 1,043,905 miles tall and is surrounded by 60,000 lesser peaks. What do you think? Would such a body be considered large? Subhuti answered, Yes, indeed, world-honored one. That would be very large. Why? Because the body you described is not an ordinary human body, but one achieved through making great vows and practicing great deeds. However, even such a great body is still only a provisional name. It, too, is not ultimately real.
The supremacy of unconditioned blessings. 11. Subhuti, if there were as many rivers like the Ganges as there are grains of sand in the Ganges, would the total of grains of sand in all these rivers be very great? Subhuti replied, Very great, world-honored one. These rivers would be innumerable. How much more so would be their sand grains? Subhuti, I now tell you truly. If a virtuous man or woman filled a number of universes, as great as the number of sand grains in all these rivers, with the 7 treasures, and gave them all away in alms, dana, would his or her merit be great? Subhuti replied, Very great, world-honored one. The Buddha said to Subhuti, If a virtuous man or woman receives and holds in mind even a 4-line stanza of this sutra, and expounds it to others, his or her merit will surpass that of the almsgiver.
The Buddha continued, Subhuti, what do you think? Suppose we take all the grains of sand in the Ganges River, and for each grain of sand, we imagine it to represent a whole Ganges River. 1 grain, 1 Ganges. Then, consider the number of sands in all those countless Ganges rivers. Wouldn't that be an unimaginably large number? Subhuti replied, Indeed, world-honored one. If just 1 grain of sand represents a Ganges river, then the number of Ganges rivers becomes incalculable, let alone the total number of sands within them. It is certainly an immeasurable amount. The Buddha then solemnly said, Subhuti, I tell you truthfully, if a good man or good woman were to take 7 precious treasures, and fill as many great 3,000-fold world systems as there are sands in all those Ganges rivers, using them all for acts of charity to aid the poor and suffering, would the merit and blessings they gain be great? Subhuti responded quickly, Very great indeed, world-honored one. The Buddha then said, However, if a good man or good woman were to recite even a single verse of this Diamond Sutra daily, or remember and put into practice just 4 lines of its teaching, such as, all conditioned phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, like dew or a flash of lightning, thus should they be contemplated. And, if one sees me in form, or seeks me through sound, this person is on the wrong path. They cannot truly see the Tathagata. And, all appearances are illusory. When one sees appearances as non-appearances, only then does one see the Tathagata. If one can hold even a few such lines in their heart, live by them, or share them with others, then the merit gained would far surpass the merit of filling worlds with treasures and giving them away in charity.
Revering the proper teaching. 12. Furthermore, Subhuti, wheresoever this sutra or even one of its 4-line stanzas is expounded, you should know that all devas, men and asuras should make their offerings there, as if the place was a Buddha stupa or a Buddha temple. How much more so if someone is able to receive, hold in mind, read and recite the whole sutra. Subhuti, you should know that such a person will achieve the highest and rarest Dharma. Wheresoever this sutra may be found, the Buddha and his respected disciples will be there also.
The Buddha paused for a moment, then once again emphasized, Subhuti, no matter who the person is, no matter where or when, if they can expound the Diamond Sutra or even just the 4 lines from the sutra, the place where they teach this sutra becomes the supreme sacred site, the highest place of practice. All the celestial beings, humans, asuras, and demons of the world should respectfully offer homage to that place, just as they would to a Buddha's stupa or temple. Moreover, if someone faithfully cultivates according to the sutra's meaning, reciting this Diamond Sutra every day, their merit and virtue are incalculable. Subhuti, you should understand that those who recite and practice this sutra according to its spirit will attain the highest and most supreme state, the foremost and rarest ultimate Dharma. Therefore, wherever the Diamond Sutra is present, it is as if the Buddha himself is there. We must honor and respect those who cultivate and recite this sutra, just as we honor the disciples of the Buddha.
Accepting and upholding the Dharma of thusness. 13. Subhuti then asked the Buddha, World-honored one, what name should be given to this sutra and how should we receive and hold it in mind? The Buddha said, This sutra should be called the Diamond Prajna-Paramita, under which name you should receive and hold it. Why? Because, Subhuti, the Prajna-Paramita as expounded by the Buddha, is not Prajna-Paramita but is merely so called. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata expound the Dharma? Subhuti said, World-honored one, the Tathagata does not expound anything. Subhuti, what do you think? Are there many particles of dust in the universe? Subhuti replied, Many, world-honored one. Subhuti, the Tathagata says these particles of dust are not real, but are merely called particles of dust. The Tathagata says the universe is not real, but it is merely called the universe. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be perceived by means of his 32 physical characteristics, laksanas? No, world-honored one. The Tathagata cannot be perceived by them. Why? Because the Tathagata says they are not real, but are merely called the 32 physical characteristics. Subhuti, if on the one hand, a virtuous man or woman, in giving alms, dana, sacrifices as many lives as there are sand grains in the Ganges, and on the other hand, and expounds it to other, the merit resulting from the latter will be greater.
When the Buddha spoke these words, all the disciples praised the merit of the Diamond Sutra as truly inconceivable. Then Subhuti asked the Buddha, World-honored one, the Dharma you just taught, if it were compiled into a sutra in the future, what name should it be given? And how should we respectfully protect and uphold it? The Buddha told Subhuti, This sutra should be called the Vajracchedika-Prajna-Paramita Sutra, Diamond Wisdom Perfection Sutra. Vajra means the sharpest and strongest thing. Prajna means wonderful wisdom. And Paramita means reaching the other shore. Thus, the name signifies attaining Buddhahood swiftly through supreme wisdom. This name carries the highest meaning, so you must honor and uphold it. Moreover, the name also implies the meaning of no forms and breaking all forms. Subhuti, you should know the wonderful wisdom I speak of is formless. The sharpness of the Vajra breaks all forms. The supreme path of practicing formlessness and breaking all forms leads to liberation at the other shore. However, the name Vajracchedika-Prajna-Paramita Sutra is only a provisional name, a name given to help you, a kind of skillful means. Subhuti, what do you think? Have I truly spoken the Dharma? Subhuti replied, World-honored one, the nature of enlightenment does not cling to names or forms. Therefore, it can be said you have not really spoken Dharma. The Buddha said again, Subhuti, what do you think? Are the countless dust particles in the 3,000 great thousand worlds many? Subhuti immediately replied, Indeed they are many, world-honored one. The Buddha explained further, Subhuti, those countless dust particles are also provisional names. These tiny dust particles come from the splitting of great stones. Though now small, when they fall to the ground and mix with water, they become clumps of earth. Thus, the names are merely temporary designations. The 3,000 great thousand worlds are the same, merely provisional names. These worlds come from aggregations of dust particles forming clumps of earth. Earth forms small hills. Hills form planets. Planets arranged and changing are called the 3,000 great thousand worlds. These worlds also change according to beings' karma. When beings' minds are pure, the worlds are pure. When beings' minds are defiled, the worlds are defiled. Attachment in beings' minds creates worlds. Liberation in beings' minds means worlds are just provisional names. Subhuti, what do you think? Can one judge me by my 32 physical characteristics? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. Your 32 characteristics are also dependently arisen and provisional. Beings who fail to understand this mistake your physical body as the true Buddha, which is very unfortunate. The true Buddha dwells in everyone's pure nature. Therefore, your 32 characteristics are merely appearances, provisional names. The Buddha said, Excellent, Subhuti. You have spoken well, cutting through beings' delusions so they may immediately awaken. Therefore, if in the future, good men and women continue their cycle of birth and death endlessly, giving charity lives after lives, even if they exhaust as many bodies and lives as the sands of the Ganges, it will not surpass the merit gained by reciting, or practicing this Diamond Sutra, or even by teaching the 4 verses of this sutra to others. The merit from that will be greater than all the charity of countless lifetimes.
Leaving appearances and still cessation. 14. At that time, after listening to this sutra, Subhuti had understood its profound meaning and was moved to tears. He said to the Buddha, "How rare, O world-honored one! The Buddha has expounded such a very profound sutra. Since I have acquired the wisdom I have not heard of such a sutra. World-honored one, if someone after listening to this sutra believes that his mind is clean and pure, he will realize reality. We should know that such a person will achieve the highest and rarest merit. World-honored one, this reality is not reality, but the Tathagata calls it reality. World-honored one, as I now listen to this sutra, I have no difficulty in believing, understanding, receiving and holding it. But in the last epoch, the last 500-year period, if there be a man who happens to listen to this sutra, believes, understands, receives and holds it, he will be most rare. Why? Because he will no longer think in terms of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. Why? Because the forms of an ego, a personality, a being and a life are not forms. Why? Because when he has rejected all forms he is called a Buddha. The Buddha said, "Just so. Subhuti, just so." If on the one hand, there be a man who listens to this sutra and is not filled with alarm, fear, or dread, you should know that such a person is most rare. Why? Because, Subhuti, as the Tathagata says, the first perfection paramita is not so, but is merely called the first perfection, paramita. Subhuti, the Tathagata speaks of the perfection of patience, ksanti paramita, which is not, but is called the perfection of patience. Why? Because, Subhuti, in a past life when my body was mutilated by Kali Raja, I had at that time no notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. Why? Because, in the past, when my body was dismembered, if I still held the conception of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, I would have been stirred by feelings of anger and hatred. Subhuti, I also remember that in the past, during my former 500 lives, I was a Ksantersi and held no conception of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. Therefore, Subhuti, bodhisattvas should forsake all conceptions of form, and resolve to develop the supreme enlightenment mind, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Their mind should not abide in form, sound, smell, taste, touch and Dharma. Their minds should abide nowhere. If minds abide somewhere, it will be in falsehood. This is why the Buddha says that bodhisattva's mind should not abide in form when practicing charity, dana. Subhuti, all bodhisattvas should thus make offerings for the welfare of all living beings. The Tathagata speaks of forms which are not forms and of living beings who are not living beings. Subhuti, the Tathagata's words are true and correspond to reality. They are ultimate words, neither deceitful nor heterodox. Subhuti, the Dharma the Tathagata has obtained is neither real nor unreal. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva practices charity, dana, with a mind abiding in things, Dharma, he is like a man entering the darkness where he cannot see anything. But if a bodhisattva practices dana with a mind not abiding in Dharma, he is like a man with open eyes, who can see everything in the sunshine. Subhuti, in future ages, if a virtuous man or woman is able to receive, hold, in mind, read and recite this sutra, the Tathagata, by means of his Buddha wisdom, will know and see clearly that such a person will achieve immeasurable and unlimitable merits.
At that time, Subhuti, upon hearing these words, further affirmed the supreme and wondrous Dharma. He had realized, recognizing that this profound Dharma could in the future liberate sentient beings, helping them awaken and be freed, no longer lost and sunk in the sea of birth and death. Although he had already attained the Arhat status, he was deeply moved and wept openly. Then he said to the Buddha, "Most rare and precious, world-honored one, the supreme, profound, and subtle Dharma you speak of now, from the past until today, I have thoroughly understood all wondrous principles, yet I have never heard such a teaching before. World-honored one, I can now foresee that if, in the future, someone can see or hear this sutra, and come to understand it, they will surely develop faith, and then practice the pure Dharma gate, cleansing their own nature, realizing the true original aspect of mind is Buddha. Because all beings possess Buddha nature, it is only that their Buddha nature is obscured, like a mirror that should be bright and clear but is covered by dust. Once the dust is wiped away, the true nature of the mirror is clear and bright. Likewise, sentient beings originally possess Buddha nature, but due to the influence of greed, anger, and ignorance, various afflictions arise. If there were no afflictions brought about by greed, anger, and ignorance, one would be immediately free and at ease. Using this mind, one directly attains Buddhahood. Such a person is surely one who quickly accomplishes the highest, most rare and wondrous merits. World-honored one, sentient beings inherently possess Buddha nature, meaning their original face is Buddha nature, but they have polluted it. Once one understands this principle and practices to realize it, they can become a Buddha. However, the Buddha nature of true original aspect you speak of is also merely a provisional designation. Even those who practice and realize it should not cling to it. World-honored one, hearing the supreme, profound, and subtle Dharma you speak of today, I firmly believe it without doubt and can understand it. Moreover, I will practice according to this wondrous Dharma you now teach. This is not difficult for me. But after the Buddha's passing into parinirvana, following the true Dharma period of 1,000 years, the semblance Dharma period of 1,000 years, and the final degenerate Dharma period of 500 years, a total of 2,500 years, If someone then sees or hears this Vajracchedika Sutra, and understands its profound meaning, believing without doubt and practicing according to the Dharma, I think such a person is truly rare and precious. This person will be able to attain the highest, rarest, supreme merit, and it will be no problem for them to become a Buddha early. Why? Because such a person no longer holds to the notions of self, the ego-clinging person, the attachment to others, sentient being, the discriminating mind with many distractions, or lifespan, the desire for longevity. How can this be seen? Because attachment to self is actually a deluded, inverted conception. Likewise, person, sentient being, and lifespan attachments arise from selfishness, attachment, discrimination, and desire. These are all unreal. But sentient beings often cling to these unreal, illusory phenomena of birth and death without awareness. Why? Because they lose their way and misuse their minds. Conversely, if the mind does not cling to any of these, it neither arises nor ceases, neither comes nor goes, neither increases nor decreases. This is the Buddha's realm. After hearing this, the Buddha said to Subhuti, "You have spoken correctly. You have spoken correctly. If anyone reads or hears this sutra, as long as they apply their mind correctly and practice according to the Dharma, this is the shortcut to Buddhahood. This is the truth." I emphasize even more that if in the future anyone sees or hears this sutra, and is not startled, doubtful, fearful, or anxious, such a person is exceedingly rare indeed. Why? Subhuti, you should know that what I speak of now is the first paramita. Although I say, first paramita, you must not cling to the first paramita, because what I say is only a name, a convenient term to guide beings in their practice. Subhuti. Consider the paramita of patience. This too cannot be clung to. One must be patient but without attachment to patience. Endure insults but without feeling insulted, without any hatred. Thus, what I call the paramita of patience is also just a name. Why? Subhuti, in a past life when I was harmed by King Galika, even when my limbs, ears, and nose were cut off by sword, I bore no hatred. This shows that then I no longer had the notions of self, person, sentient being, or lifespan. Why? Because if I still had those notions when my body was cut apart, I would have developed hatred then. Subhuti, I recall that in the last 500 lifetimes as a patient ascetic, I practiced the path of patience, and even then, I no longer had notions of self, person, sentient being, or lifespan. Therefore, Subhuti, to be a great bodhisattva, one must not hold any attachments at all. Seeing all external forms must not shake the original mind. When one can do this, then one can generate the Bodhi mind of unsurpassed, right, and equal enlightenment, truly corresponding to the Buddha mind. After corresponding to the Buddha mind, One must always maintain it so that it never declines. How can this goal be achieved? By not clinging to beautiful objects, nor to soft music, fragrant smells, delicious food, or luxurious garments. Only then can the pure mind arise. The pure mind can only arise when there is no attachment to anything. If the mind is attached, then thoughts will arise with all external things, generating afflictions. Thus, the pure mind disappears and one cannot abide peacefully. Therefore, I say, the bodhisattva's mind must not have any attachments of any kind, so that without obstacles, one can perform pure giving, dana. Subhuti, to be a great bodhisattva. For the sake of benefiting vast sentient beings, one must give as I have described. In summary, do not cling to anything, for all things in the world are false. They only temporarily exist before your eyes, and soon will be destroyed and disappear with time. Sentient beings are the same. They are merely provisional names, formed by the effects of karma and retribution. Once karma and retribution vanish, where is there a sentient being? Subhuti, I always speak the truth, the real truth, the eternal and unchanging truth. I never speak deceiving words or strange words. Subhuti, the Dharma I have realized is without form. Without form means it has no physical entity, yet it is complete in its own nature, so it is not false. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva, when giving, always thinks, to whom am I giving? How much am I giving? When will it be repaid? Such giving is the giving of an ordinary person, not that of a bodhisattva. Because the bodhisattva's giving is giving without expecting return. How could there still be thoughts of repayment after giving? Therefore, if a bodhisattva, while giving, continues to think about repayment, it is like a person entering a dark room. They see nothing and cannot receive light. If a bodhisattva, when giving, does not think about to whom they give, how much they give, nor expects repayment, such giving is like having two bright eyes. In the sunlight, everything can be seen clearly. Subhuti, in the future degenerate Dharma age, if there are good men and women who see or hear this sutra, then recite and practice it according to the Dharma, they will receive the Buddha's light shining upon them. By my wisdom's judgment, I can be certain these people have good roots, and they will attain boundless and immeasurable merits.
The merit and virtue gained from upholding this sutra. 15. Subhuti, if a virtuous man or woman sacrifices in the practice of charity, dana, as many lived as the sand grains of the Ganges in the morning, at midday and again in the evening, and continues so doing throughout numberless eons. And if a person after listening to this sutra, believes in his own mind without further contradiction, the latter's merit will surpass that of the former. How much more so if this sutra is written, received, held, read, recited, and expounded to others. Subhuti, to sum up, the merits resulting from this sutra are inconceivable. inestimable and without limit. The Tathagata expounds it to those initiated into the Mahayana and the Supreme Jnana. If they are able to receive, hold in mind, read and recite it and expound it widely to others, the Tathagata will know and will see that they will achieve inexpressible and inconceivable merits that are without measure or limit. They will bear responsibility for the Tathagata's supreme enlightenment, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Why? Because, Subhuti, those who take delight in the Hinayana, and hold the view of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, cannot listen to, receive, hold in mind, read and recite this sutra and explain it to others. Subhuti, wheresoever this sutra may be found, all worlds of devas, men and asuras should make offerings, for you should know that such a place is just a stupa which should be revered, worshipped and circumambulated with offerings of flowers and incense.
Subhuti. Suppose there is a good man or good woman who, every morning, offers gifts with as many bodies as the sands of the Ganges river. At noon, again offers with as many bodies as the sands of the Ganges. And in the afternoon, once more offers with as many bodies as the sands of the Ganges. If such offerings continue day after day, year after year, for countless hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, billions of kalpas, with so many bodies offered each day. Now suppose another person hears or sees this sutra, and then generates the resolve to practice according to the Dharma, with unwavering faith. The merit and virtue obtained by this person surpasses that of the one who made offerings with as many bodies as the sands of the Ganges. Moreover, if this person copies the sutra by hand, accepts and practices its teachings, recites it morning and evening, and explains it to others, then the merit gained is incalculable. Subhuti. In summary, the merit of this sutra is truly immeasurable and inconceivable. It cannot be measured by any ruler or weighed on any scale. Even the ocean has boundaries, but the merit of this sutra is boundless and limitless. Therefore, I specifically teach this sutra to those who have great vows, who practice the great vehicle bodhisattva path, and who cultivate the highest vehicle of Buddhahood. If anyone resolves to practice and recite this sutra, or wishes to explain its meaning to benefit all sentient beings, the Buddha will know and see these people. They will achieve great merit, so vast it cannot be measured by ruler or scale. Though the ocean has a boundary, the merit of such people is boundless and infinite, truly wondrous merit. Such people, I foresee, will certainly be able to undertake the great vow of the Tathagata to widely propagate the Dharma, so that all beings may attain unsurpassed, right, and equal enlightenment. Why do I say these people can take on the Tathagata's great mission of Dharma propagation? Subhuti. I tell you, only those who cultivate the great vehicle bodhisattva path have vast compassion. In contrast, those who practice the lesser vehicle, Hinayana, teachings are busy trying to liberate themselves, and have no time or thought to liberate others. They often cling to the notions of self, person, sentient being, and lifespan. Such people, even if they receive or hear this sutra, will generate a repulsive attitude and will not read or recite it, nor explain it to others. This is impossible. Subhuti. The merit of this sutra is so great that wherever this Vajracchedika exists, whatever place or location, all the heavenly beings of the heavens, human beings, and asuras should offer reverence and support. That place is equivalent to a Buddha's stupa, and thus should be respectfully worshipped, circumambulated, incense burned, and flowers offered.
Karmic obstructions can be purified. 16. Furthermore, Subhuti, if a virtuous man or woman receives, holds in mind, reads and recites this sutra, and is despised by others, this person who is bound to suffer from evil destinies in retribution for his past sins, and whose karmic sins are now eradicated by the other's contempt, will attain supreme enlightenment, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Subhuti, I remember that in the past countless eons before the advent of Dipankara Buddha, I met 84,000 milliards of Buddhas to whom I made offerings and whom I served faultlessly. Now if in the last period of 500 years in the Buddha Kalpa, someone is able to receive, hold in mind, read and recite this sutra, his merits will far exceed mine which resulted from my offerings made to Buddhas. For mine cannot be reckoned as 100th, 1,000th, 1/10,000th or 100,000th part thereof. In fact, no computation or comparison is possible. Subhuti, in the last period of the Buddha Kalpa, if a virtuous man or woman is able to receive, hold, in mind, read and recite this sutra, my full statement of this person's merits will create derangement, doubt and disbelief in the minds of all listeners. Subhuti, you should know that as the meaning of this sutra is inconceivable, so is the fruit of its reward.
At this point, the Buddha further explained, Subhuti. Suppose there is a good man or good woman who sees or hears this sutra, and then practices according to the Dharma, reciting this sutra. If such a person not only does not receive respect from others, but is also despised or looked down upon by them, this is because in their past lives they created very heavy negative karma. They should have fallen into one of the three evil paths, the paths of hell beings, hungry ghosts, or animals, to suffer various kinds of misery. But now, because they are despised by others, those past negative karmas are offset, and in the future they will be able to attain unsurpassed, right, and equal enlightenment. Subhuti. I recall that during the immeasurable number of Asamkhya Kalpas, before I met the Buddha Dipankara, I had already made offerings to 84 million billion nayotas of Buddhas. I offered to every one of them and did not omit any. Although I gained great merit from offering to so many Buddhas, if someone in the Dharma's final age sees or hears this sutra, and practices it by reciting it according to the Dharma, the merit gained by this person is not even 1%, nor 1/1000th, nor 1/10000000th of the merit I gained from those offerings. Even if all mathematics and calculations were used, it would still be impossible to fully calculate or compare it. This shows how great the merit of the Diamond Sutra is. Subhuti. Suppose in the degenerate age there is a good man or woman who can practice and recite this Diamond Sutra according to the Dharma. Then the merit they gain is truly immense. If I were to fully describe it, ordinary people might develop doubts and eventually slander the Buddha Dharma, which is harmful. Those who slander the Dharma will suffer the karmic results of mental confusion and madness, and they will never be able to approach the Buddha Dharma again. Why is this so? Because it is the result of doubting the Buddha's teachings and not believing in the Dharma. Subhuti. You should know that the principles taught in this Diamond Sutra are formless and inconceivable, and thus their karmic results are also inconceivable.
Ultimately there is no self. 17. At the time, Subhuti asked the Buddha, "World-honored one, if a virtuous man or woman is determined to develop the supreme enlightened mind, how should his or her mind abide and how should it be subdued?" The Buddha said to Subhuti, "A virtuous man or woman who is determined to develop the supreme enlightened mind should thus develop it. I have to lead all living beings to put a stop to reincarnation and escape suffering. And when they have been so led, not one of them in fact stops reincarnating or escapes suffering. Why? Because, Subhuti, if a bodhisattva clings to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, he is not a true bodhisattva. Why? Because, Subhuti, there is not really a Dharma which can develop the supreme enlightenment mind. Subhuti, what do you think? When the Tathagata was with Dipankara Buddha, did he have any Dharma by means of which he attained supreme enlightenment Anattara Samyak Sambodhi? No, world-honored one. As I understand the meaning of the Buddha's teaching, when he was with Dipankara Buddha, he had no Dharma by means of which he attained supreme enlightenment. The Buddha said, "Just so." Subhuti, just so. There was really no Dharma by means of which the Tathagata attained supreme enlightenment. Subhuti, if there had been, Dipankara Buddha would not have predicted, "In your next life, you will be a Buddha named Sakyamuni." Since there truly is no Dharma by which one attains Anattara Samyak Sambodhi unsurpassed perfect enlightenment, the Buddha Dipankara gave me a prediction, saying, "In your next life, you will be a Buddha named Sakyamuni." Why is it? Because Tathagata means the suchness of all dharmas. If someone still says, "The Tathagata obtained supreme enlightenment," I tell you, Subhuti, there is no Dharma by means of which the Buddha did so. Because, Subhuti, that enlightenment was by itself neither real nor unreal. This is why the Tathagata says that all dharmas are Buddha's dharmas. Subhuti, these so-called dharmas are not, but are expediently called all dharmas. Subhuti, supposing there is a man whose body is great. Subhuti said, "World-honored one, The great body of which the Tathagata speaks is not great, but is expediently called a great body. Subhuti, in like manner, if a bodhisattva says, I should lead incountable living beings to put a stop to reincarnation and escape from suffering, he cannot be called a bodhisattva. Why? Because there is really no Dharma called the bodhisattva. Therefore, the Buddha says, of all dharmas, there is not a single one which possesses an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva says, I should adorn Buddha lands, he cannot be called a bodhisattva. Why? Because when the Tathagata speaks of such adornment, it is not, but is expediently, called adornment. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva is thoroughly versed in the doctrine of the unreality of ego and of things Dharma, the Tathagata will call him a true bodhisattva.
At this point, Subhuti suddenly thought of another question and asked the Buddha, World-honored one, in the future, when good men and good women generate the Bodhi mind aspiring to attain Buddhahood, how should they abide in that Bodhi mind, and how should they subdue the deluded thoughts? The Buddha replied to Subhuti, in the future, when good men and good women generate the Bodhi mind aspiring to Buddhahood, first they should have this thought, I will become a bodhisattva. I should reduce the suffering of sentient beings and help them attain liberation. Yet, after I have reduced their suffering and helped them attain liberation, I must not hold the thought that there are sentient beings I have liberated. Why is that? Because, Subhuti, if a bodhisattva still holds the notions of self or the notion of a living being, then that person cannot be considered a bodhisattva. Why is that? Subhuti, it is because in reality there is no such thing as a supreme, perfect, and equal enlightenment. Why? Because supreme, perfect, and equal enlightenment means ultimate purity. If it is ultimately pure, then how can there still be the thought, I aspire to attain supreme, perfect, and equal enlightenment? No such thought exists, world-honored one. According to my understanding and the Buddha's teaching, at the time of Buddha Dipankara, the practice was of selflessness and formlessness, the ultimate pure conduct. There was no so-called attainment, nor was there any method of bodhi to be obtained. The Buddha said, Yes. Yes. Subhuti. At that time, I had already reached the ultimate purity of selflessness and formlessness. There was no need for any method. So when I was with Buddha Dipankara, I really did not obtain any method, nor any so-called supreme perfect equal enlightenment method. Subhuti, if there really were such a method to attain supreme perfect equal enlightenment that I held in mind, then the ultimate pure mind would no longer exist. Since the ultimate pure mind did not exist, Buddha Dipankara would not have given me the prediction, nor said, in your future life, you will become a Buddha called Shakyamuni Buddha. It is because at that time, I had attained the ultimate pure mind that there was no distraction, or thought of, I have attained supreme perfect equal enlightenment. Thus, Buddha Dipankara gave me the prediction, saying, in your future life you will become a Buddha called Shakyamuni Buddha. Why is this so? Because the two words, Tathagata, thus come one actually mean, as it really is, ultimately pure. Therefore, practitioners who can attain the ultimate purity, as it really is, will become Buddhas. If anyone says, the Buddha attained Buddhahood by obtaining a method of supreme perfect equal enlightenment, that is wrong. Subhuti, in truth there is no method for the Buddha to obtain. All Buddha dharmas are expedient teachings and depend on conditions. Supreme perfect equal enlightenment is also just a false name. Subhuti, if one insists that there is a method to attain supreme perfect equal enlightenment, I can only tell you 4 words. No real, no false. No real means all forms are unreal. If the practitioner can avoid being influenced by all forms, their own nature will be free and liberated from afflictions, escaping birth and death. This is the real, no false state, meaning all is not false. Therefore, I say, the Dharma is extremely subtle and can be applied to anything. Walking, standing, sitting, lying. All are Dharma. All phenomena can be applied to Dharma. So all phenomena can be called Dharma. Subhuti. When I say all phenomena can be called Dharma, this is only a provisional name spoken for those not yet awakened. Once awakened and having attained ultimate purity, there is no need for any Dharma. Subhuti, this is like I said before. For example, someone's body as big as Mount Sumeru. Subhuti immediately replied, Oh, I understand, world-honored one. The great body you mentioned is not an ordinary person's body, but a subtle and formless great body obtained by making great vows and practicing great conduct. However, this formless great body is large in terms of a human body, but small compared to the Buddha's limitless and formless great body. So, the great body you mentioned is only a provisional name, without real distinction of size. The Buddha again said, Subhuti, it is the same for a great bodhisattva. One must not cling to any provisional names or forms. Even though every day they work to liberate sentient beings, they must not have thoughts such as, my merit is great, my ability is strong, I can liberate countless beings. If such thoughts arise, then there is attachment. With deluded attachments, one cannot be called a bodhisattva. How so? Subhuti, the name bodhisattva is just a provisional name established to liberate sentient beings. Therefore, I say if someone does not cling to self-view, person view, sentient being view, or life view, then they can be called a bodhisattva. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva has the thought and says to others, I must adorn the Buddha's pure land, then that person is not a bodhisattva because they have clung to provisional names and forms. They do not know that the words adorn, are only provisional names spoken for sentient beings. The Buddha's pure land is originally pure. Where is the need for you to adorn it? Subhuti, if a bodhisattva can attain complete understanding of the Dharma, they will not be hindered by self-view, obstacles of affliction, or Dharma-view, obstacles of wisdom. Only then can I say that person is a true bodhisattva.
Contemplating the oneness of everything. 18. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess human eyes? Yes, world-honored one. The Tathagata possesses human eyes. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess Deva eye? Yes, world-honored one. The Tathagata possesses Deva eyes. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess wisdom eyes? Yes, world-honored one. The Tathagata possesses wisdom eyes. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess Dharma eyes? Yes, world-honored one. The Tathagata possess Dharma eyes. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess Buddha eyes? Yes, world-honored one. The Tathagata possesses Buddha eyes. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata say that the sand grains in the Ganges are sand grains? Yes, world-honored one. The Tathagata says they are sand grains. Subhuti, what do you think? If there were as many Ganges rivers as sand grains in the Ganges, and if there were as many Buddha realms as sand grains of all these Ganges rivers, would there be many world systems? Many, world-honored one. The Buddha said the living beings in all these world systems have many different minds which are all known to the Tathagata. Why? Because the minds the Tathagata speaks of are not minds, but are, expediently, called minds. And why? Subhuti, the past mind cannot be grasped. The present mind cannot be grasped. And the future mind cannot be grasped.
The Buddha then asked, Subhuti, what do you think? Although I have the Buddha eye, if I look with my physical eye at all the sand grains in the Ganges River, would I say they are sand? Subhuti replied, Yes, world-honored one. If you use your physical eye to look at them, of course they are still sand. The Buddha continued, Subhuti, what do you think? Imagine the number of sand grains in a single Ganges river. Now imagine as many Ganges rivers as that number of sand grains. Then imagine all the sand grains in all those Ganges rivers. If you use that number to represent the number of worlds, would you consider the number of Buddha lands many or few? Subhuti replied, Oh, that is an extremely large number, world-honored one. The Buddha then told Subhuti, Among so many countries and lands, I know all the various thoughts of all sentient beings. Why can I know? Because the thoughts of sentient beings are all deluded and confused. their thinking is illusory and unreal. Therefore, this is not truly a mind, but only a provisional name called mind. Sentient beings' minds think about the past, present, and future. But the past has already become the past. Just like human lifespan. Once the past is gone, it will not return. The present is also ever-changing, like sitting in a moving car. You say you see the bridges beginning now, but by the time you finish speaking, you are already on the bridge's middle or end, or even past the bridge. So the present mind cannot be grasped. What about the future? It is the same, because the mind changes with circumstances and has no fixed nature. How then can one predict future thoughts? So, the mind of the past, the mind of the present, and the mind of the future are all unreal and unattainable.
Understanding and transforming the Dharma realm. 19. Subhuti, what do you think? If someone filled the universe with the 7 treasures and gave all away in his practice of dana, would this good cause enable the giver to gain a great merit? Yes, world-honored one. Because of this good cause the giver would gain a great merit. Subhuti, if the merit was real, the Tathagata would not say it was great. He says so because there is no merit.
The Buddha continued, Subhuti, if someone were to accumulate as many precious treasures as there are in the 3,000 great thousand worlds, and offer them in charity, do you think their merit would be great? Subhuti replied, Yes, world-honored one. If someone were to give in such a way, their merit would indeed be great. The Buddha said, Subhuti, if that person clings to the merit as something truly existing, then the merit they gain is limited. Therefore, I do not say the merit is great. But if one gives without dwelling on form and without expecting any return, then I say the merit is great.
Leaving both form and appearances. 20. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Buddha be perceived by his completely perfect physical body, Rupakaya? No, world-honored one. The Tathagata should not be so perceived. Why? Because the Buddha says the completely perfect Rupakaya is not, but is called the completely perfect Rupakaya. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be perceived by his completely perfect forms? No, world-honored one. The Tathagata should not be so perceived. Because the Tathagata says the completely perfect forms are not, but are called completely perfect forms.
The Buddha asked again, Subhuti, what do you think? Can one use a perfect physical body to measure whether someone is a Buddha? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. One cannot use a perfect physical body to measure it, because a perfect physical body is merely a temporary combination of water, fire, wind, and earth. Once these elements disperse, where is the perfect physical body? Therefore, the perfect physical body is only a provisional name and should not be clung to. The Buddha asked again, Subhuti, then what do you think? Can one use a perfect, formless Dharma body to measure whether someone is a Buddha? Subhuti replied, No, world-honored one. One cannot use a perfect, formless Dharma body to measure it, because as the Buddha said before, all phenomena that have form are illusory. If one sees all forms as no form, then one sees the Tathagata. Therefore, the perfect formless Dharma body is still an illusory form, merely a provisional name, and should not be clung to.
What is spoken is not spoken. 21. Subhuti, do not say that the Tathagata thinks, I must expound the Dharma. Do not have such a thought. Why? Because if someone says so, he will really slander the Buddha and be unable to understand my teaching. Subhuti, when the Tathagata expounds the Dharma, there is really no Dharma to teach, but this is expediently called teaching the Dharma. Then the wise Subhuti said to the Buddha, World-honored one, will there be in future ages living beings who will believe this Dharma when they hear it? The Buddha said, Subhuti, the living beings you just mentioned are neither living nor not living beings. Why? Because, Subhuti, the Tathagata says these living beings are not really, but they are expediently, called living beings.
The Buddha continued, Subhuti, do not think that I have the thought. I have spoken many Buddhist teachings for sentient beings. You should not think this way. Why? Because if I had such a thought, it would mean I still have delusions and attachments. Having delusions and attachments means one is no longer a Buddha, but just an ordinary person. So if someone says, the Buddha once said, I have taught many Dharma teachings to sentient beings, that person is slandering me and does not understand the true meaning of my teaching. Subhuti, the subtle principle of the Buddha is endless and limitless. The Buddha's subtle principle is formless. The formless subtle principle must be expressed through words with form, but one can only say, it cannot be spoken, it cannot be spoken. Yet to dispel the confusion of sentient beings, I must say something even though in reality I have said nothing. In fact, it cannot be spoken. Therefore, the phrase, speaking the Dharma, is merely a provisional name. After the Buddha finished speaking, Subhuti, full of wonderful wisdom, asked the Buddha, World-honored one, in the future, will many sentient beings, upon hearing these subtle teachings, be able to develop faith? The Buddha said, Subhuti, all sentient beings inherently have Buddha nature. They just have not yet awakened. Therefore, you cannot say they are entirely sentient beings, nor can you say they are not sentient beings. Why? Subhuti, because sentient beings are merely phenomena arising from the union of various conditions. When they are deluded, they are called sentient beings. When awakened, they can become Buddhas. Since they have not yet become Buddhas, we temporarily call them sentient beings.
No Dharma can be obtained. 22. Subhuti said to the Buddha, World-honored one, does your own attainment of supreme enlightenment, anattara samyak sambodhi, mean that you have not gained anything whatsoever? The Buddha replied, just so, Subhuti, just so. I have not gained even the least Dharma from supreme enlightenment. And this is called supreme enlightenment.
After hearing this, Subhuti said to the Buddha, World-honored one, since you have attained the supreme perfect enlightenment, shouldn't it actually be that there is nothing to be attained? The Buddha replied, Yes, Subhuti. I have not obtained even the slightest thing regarding the supreme perfect enlightenment. For anything that involves gain or loss is a deluded mind, not the true nature of the self. The true nature of the self is inherently complete in everyone. There is no need to obtain it, nor is it possible to obtain it. Therefore, it can only be provisionally named the supreme perfect enlightenment. The Buddha further explained, Subhuti, though the term supreme perfect enlightenment sounds lofty and exalted, everyone's Buddha nature is actually the same and equal. There is no one who is higher or lower, because there is no difference. That is why it is called the supreme perfect enlightenment.
A pure mind does wholesome deeds. 23. Furthermore, Subhuti, this Dharma is universal and impartial. Wherefore it is called supreme enlightenment. The practice of all good virtues dharmas, free from attachment to an ego, a personality, a being and a life, will result in the attainment of supreme enlightenment. Subhuti, the so-called good virtues, dharmas, the Tathagata says, are not good, but are expediently called good virtues.
Subhuti. In the future, if sentient beings wish to attain the supreme perfect enlightenment, they must practice with no self, no selfishness, no person, no favoritism or partiality, no sentient being, no discrimination, and no lifespan, no desire or craving. If one cultivates in this way, then one is practicing all wholesome dharmas. By practicing all wholesome dharmas, one can attain the supreme perfect enlightenment, which means becoming a Buddha. Subhuti. What I call wholesome dharmas is actually just the gradual awakening of everyone's Buddha nature. Once everyone's Buddha nature is awakened, then what wholesome dharmas remain? Therefore, this is only a provisional name called wholesome dharmas.
Blessings and wisdom beyond compare. 24. Subhuti, if a man, in his practice of charity dana gives away the 7 treasures piled up in a heap, as great as all the Mount Sumeru in the universe put together, and another man receives, holds in mind, reads and recites even a 4-line stanza of this Prajna-paramita Sutra, and expounds it to others, the merit resulting from the former's dana will not be worth 100th, 1,000th, 1/10,000th, and 100,000th part of that obtained by the latter, as no conceivable comparison can be made between the two.
Subhuti. Suppose someone offers treasures equivalent to all the Mount Sumeru heaps filled with 7 precious gems in the 3,000 great thousand worlds. Even so, their merit and virtue cannot compare to that of someone who helps to print this Diamond Sutra, thus creating a karmic connection with others through it, or who recites the 4-line verse from this sutra, or practices and recites it morning and evening, or teaches it to others. The merit of the former, though great, does not even reach 1%, or 1/10,000,000th, or even one of countless fractions of the merit gained by the latter. Even all the arithmetic and metaphors in the world cannot compare or measure it.
Transforming without there being anyone transformed. 25. Subhuti, what do you think? You should not say the Tathagata has this thought. I should liberate living beings. Subhuti, you should not think so. Why? Because there are really no living beings whom the Tathagata can liberate. If there were, the Tathagata would hold an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. Subhuti, when the Tathagata speaks of an ego, there is in reality no ego, although common men think so. Subhuti, the Tathagata says common men are not, but are expediently called, common men.
Subhuti, what do you think? Do not suppose that when I save sentient beings, I have the thought, I must save them. Subhuti, do not think like this. Why? Because when I save sentient beings, I do not cling to. I save beings, nor do I cling to who is saved by me. So I have no notion of beings being saved by me. On the contrary, if when I save beings, I constantly think, I saved so and so, or so and so is saved by me, then I have attachments, and with attachments come the notions of self, person, sentient being, and lifespan. Subhuti, when I teach the Dharma, I often say, I. But that is just a provisional name. In reality, I have no selfhood and do not cling to the self. Ordinary people are different. They believe everything is truly real. So they become greedy and attached, binding themselves forever without liberation. Subhuti, actually the term ordinary person is also just a provisional name from the Buddha's perspective. There is no true ordinary person, because all beings possess Buddha nature. Only due to present delusion are they called ordinary people. But once awakened, where is there any ordinary person?
The Dharma body is not appearances. 26. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be recognized by his 32 physical characteristics? Subhuti replied, yes, yes, he can. The Buddha said, Subhuti, if the Tathagata can be recognized by his 32 physical characteristics, a world ruler Chakravarti would be the Tathagata. Subhuti said to the Buddha, World-honored one, as I understand your teaching, the Tathagata cannot be recognized by his 32 physical characteristics. Thereupon, the world-honored one recited the following gatha. He who sees me by outward appearance and seeks me in sound, treads the heterodox path, and cannot perceive the Tathagata.
Subhuti, what do you think? Can one determine whether someone is a Buddha by the 32 marks of a great man? Subhuti answered, Yes, it should be possible to judge whether someone is a Buddha by the 32 marks. After hearing Subhuti's answer, the Buddha explained, Subhuti, if one can judge a Buddha by the 32 marks, then if you see a wheel-turning king, a king who governs the 4 continents and also possesses the 32 marks, you would also consider him a Buddha. Upon hearing this, Subhuti immediately told the Buddha, World-honored one, I now understand your meaning. One should not judge whether someone is a Buddha by the 32 marks. After Subhuti finished speaking, the world-honored one uttered the following 4-line verse. If someone wants to see the Buddha's external appearance, or hear the sound of the Buddha's teaching, and so every day burns incense and worships, praying for a response, this is the conduct of the deluded, who do not know that the Buddha must be sought in the mind, not outside it. Those who take this path are walking the wrong way, and will never see the Tathagata of their own nature.
Not destroyed nor annihilated. 27. Subhuti, if you have this thought, the Tathagata does not rely on his possession of characteristics to obtain supreme enlightenment. Subhuti, banish that thought. The Tathagata does not rely on his possession of characteristics to obtain supreme enlightenment. Subhuti, if you think it while developing the perfect enlightenment mind, you will advocate the annihilation of all dharmas. Do not have such a thought. Why? Because one who develops the supreme enlightenment mind does not advocate the annihilation of things.
Subhuti, when I say that all forms and appearances are false, I am not saying that cause and effect are also false. You should think like this. The Buddha did not attain unsurpassed, perfect enlightenment because he had a complete physical body. After finishing, the Buddha repeated, Subhuti, you must have this understanding. The Buddha did not attain unsurpassed, perfect enlightenment because he had a complete physical body. Wouldn't that be like having a rice harvest without planting any seedlings? That is impossible. I tell you again, Subhuti, if you think like this, that after generating the Supreme Bodhi mind, there is nothing at all, everything is emptiness, there is no cause and effect, no reincarnation, that death is like a lamp going out, that doing good has no reward and doing evil has no retribution. You must never hold such a view. Why? Because those who generate the Supreme Bodhi mind do not teach that even cause and effect do not exist. They only say that nothing should be grasped or clung to.
No greed and nothing acquired. 28. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva gave in his practice of dana all the 7 treasures in quantity sufficient to fill worlds, as many as sand grains in the Ganges, and another man comprehended that all dharmas were egoless, and thereby achieved perfection of patience kshanti, the latter's merit would surpass that of the former. Why? Because, Subhuti, all bodhisattvas do not receive reward for their merits. Subhuti asked the Buddha, World-honored one. Why do bodhisattvas not receive reward for their merits? Subhuti, bodhisattvas should have no longing and no attachment when they practice meritorious virtues. Therefore, they do not receive a reward.
Subhuti. Suppose there is a bodhisattva who accumulates treasures equivalent to the sands of the Ganges River from countless worlds, and offers them in charity. However, if he clings to the merit gained, then though his merit is great, it is still limited. If there is another person who also practices the bodhisattva path, giving charity and spreading the Dharma, but whose mind does not cling to merit, and who has no attachment to the I, and who thereby attains the freedom of enduring without endurance, enduring while forgetting endurance, then I can tell you, this bodhisattva's merit surpasses that of the first. Why? Because, without attachment there is no limit. With attachment there is a limit. Subhuti. Moreover, to be a bodhisattva one must not be bound by merit. Subhuti then asked, World-honored one. Why must a bodhisattva not be bound by merit? The Buddha explained, Subhuti. Bodhisattvas perform many beneficial acts to save sentient beings. But after doing so, they should not greedily think about how much merit they have gained or cling to their achievements. Otherwise, they develop thoughts of gain and loss. Having such thoughts leads to vexations and delusions, which are harmful to practitioners, especially to a bodhisattva.
The quiescence of his awesome demeanor. 29. Subhuti, if someone says the Tathagata comes or goes, sits or lies, he does not understand what I mean. Why? Because the Tathagata has neither whence to come nor whither to go. Therefore, he is called the Tathagata.
Subhuti. Therefore, if someone says, What's so special about the Buddha? Isn't he just like us ordinary people, having a body, needing 2 feet to walk around, sometimes needing to sit down to rest, or lie down to sleep? Such a person has not understood the true meaning of the 2 words, Tathagata. Why? Because they do not know that my physical body is merely a convenient tool to save sentient beings. Since sentient beings are deluded by the cycle of the 6 realms, they can only see visible, illusory forms and cannot perceive the invisible, precious aspect. That is why I manifest a physical body to save sentient beings. But my invisible true body pervades the entire space. There is no coming or going, no sitting or lying down. Therefore, there is no so-called coming or going. This is why I am called Tathagata, which is another name for me.
The principle of a unity of appearances. 30. Subhuti. What do you think? If a virtuous man or woman reduced to dust all the worlds in the universe, would those particles of dust many? Subhuti replied, Many, world-honored one. Why? Because if they really existed, the Buddha would not say they were particles of dust. And why? Because when the Buddha speaks of particles of dust, they are not, but are expediently called, particles of dust. World-honored one. When the Tathagata speaks of worlds, they are not, but are expediently called, worlds. Why? Because if they really exist, they are just agglomerations. The Tathagata speaks of agglomerations which are not, but are expediently called, agglomerations. Subhuti, that which is called an agglomeration cannot be spoken of. But the vulgar man has longing for an attachment to this thing.
Subhuti. Suppose a good man or good woman breaks the 3,000 great thousand worlds into tiny dust particles. To you, would these tiny dust particles be considered many? Subhuti replied, certainly many, world-honored one. But this many is not eternal or unchanging, it changes over time. For example, if the dust particles break down, they become even finer powder. If they combine, they become small clumps of earth or stones. If they become powder or clumps, then there are no longer dust particles. Therefore, Buddha, you would not say there are many dust particles anymore. Why? Because the many dust particles Buddha speaks of are merely temporary appearances, a provisional name for many dust particles only. Subhuti continued. World-honored one, what you call the 3,000 great thousand worlds is also the same. It is composed of many small thousand worlds, which themselves are composed of many planets. So the 3,000 great thousand worlds is also just a provisional name. Why? Because if the world truly existed inherently, truly was real, unchanging, and eternal, then calling it world would be reasonable. But the world is actually just a composite. It is only a provisional name. Because whenever there is combination, there is division. There is no real unchanging entity. So a composite is only a provisional name. After listening, the Buddha continued. Subhuti. The world is a combination of many things, which is an undeniable fact, but it is changeable, uncertain, and unreal. It sometimes combines, sometimes separates. Even the Buddha finds it difficult to fully explain. However, ordinary people commonly enjoy talking about it, without knowing it is merely a transient phenomenon. Talking endlessly about it is of no real use. This is why sentient beings cling to the present things, and thereby lose their true nature.
Knowledge and views are not produced. 31. Subhuti, what do you think? If someone says, the Buddha speaks of the view of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, Subhuti, does that person understand what I mean? No, world-honored one. That person does not understand. Why? Because when the Tathagata speaks of the view of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, it is not really, but is expediently called the view of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. Subhuti, he who develops the supreme enlightenment mind, should thus know, see, believe and comprehend all things. He should not set up the perception of things dharma-laksana in his mind. Subhuti, the so-called form of things dharma-laksana, the Tathagata says is not, but is, expediently called the form of things.
Subhuti. Suppose someone says, the Buddha often speaks of self-view, person view, sentient being view, and life view. Does this mean the Buddha still holds these four views himself? Subhuti, what do you think? Could someone like that truly understand the meaning behind the four views I have spoken of? Subhuti replied, no, world-honored one. This person does not understand the meaning of the four views you speak of at all. Why? Because when the Buddha speaks of self-view, person view, sentient being view, and life view, it is for the purpose of cutting off these very views in sentient beings. The Buddha has long since eliminated these four views, otherwise, how could he have attained Buddhahood? Therefore, the self-view, person view, sentient being view, and life view spoken of by the Buddha are merely provisional names. The Buddha said, Subhuti, practitioners who wish to attain unsurpassed, complete, and perfect enlightenment should have this kind of understanding, this kind of perspective, this kind of faith, and this kind of insight toward all the Dharma. They should realize the true meaning of the Buddha Dharma, and not cling to the names of the Dharma. Subhuti. Why do I say you must realize the true meaning of the Buddha Dharma, and not cling to the names of the Dharma? Because all the names of the Dharma are merely to guide sentient beings to understand.
Responses and transformations are unreal. 32. Subhuti, if on the one hand, someone gave away in alms dana the 7 treasures in quantity sufficient to fill all the worlds in uncountable eons, and if on the other hand, a virtuous man or woman developed the body-mind, and received, held in mind, read and recited even a 4-line stanza of this sutra, and expounded it to others, the latter's merit would surpass that of the former. In what manner should it be taught to others? By teaching it without attachment to form with the immutability of the Absolute. Why is it? Because all phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble and a shadow, like dew and lightning. Thus should you meditate upon them. When the Buddha had finished expounding this sutra, the elder Subhuti, together with bhiksus, bhikshunis, upasakas, upasikas, and all the worlds of devas, men and asuras who had listened to his teaching, were filled with joy and believed, received and observed it.
Subhuti. Suppose someone takes countless, innumerable worlds and fills all those worlds with the 7 treasures to make offerings. Still, this does not compare to another good man or good woman, who generates the resolve to awaken to the Buddha path, and according to this Diamond Sutra, practices diligently, or even simply takes the 4 verses and often recites them, or explains them to others, or speaks publicly to the masses. The merit and blessing this person obtains surpasses that of the one who offers treasures filling countless worlds. Now I will tell you how to explain this Dharma. When explaining, the mind must not cling to anything. Only then can the mind be undistracted and unified. Under such single-mindedness, a pure mind arises. Using this pure mind to explain the Dharma, that is the unsurpassed wonderful Dharma. However, even upon hearing or seeing this unsurpassed wonderful Dharma, you must not cling to it. Why? Because although these words are the unsurpassed wonderful Dharma, and these characters represent the unsurpassed Buddha Dharma, they are only spoken according to conditions and expedient means. Therefore, you must not cling to them. You should regard them as a dream upon waking, as empty, as illusory and unreal, like a bubble, a shadow, like dew, or a fleeting flash of lightning. You must have this understanding. Only then will my teaching of this Diamond Sutra be meaningful and not in vain. After the Buddha finished expounding this Diamond Sutra, the Venerable and Elder Subhuti, together with the bhikshus, ordained monks, bhikshunis, ordained nuns, upasakas, laymen, upasikas, laywomen, and all the gods of the heavens, humans, and the asuras, listened to the Buddha's unsurpassed wonderful Dharma with great joy and faith, and they were willing to practice according to this wonderful Dharma.
Dedication verse to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Jetavana Assembly. The merits and virtues of sutra recitation, along with boundless, supreme blessings, are all sincerely dedicated. May all sentient beings, adrift in suffering and delusion, swiftly reach the Buddha land of infinite light. Homage to all Buddhas of the 10 directions and 3 times, past, present, and future. Homage to all great Bodhisattva Mahasattvas. Dedication verse of Vajracchedika-Prajna-Paramita. May the merit of this practice be universally shared with all beings. May we and all sentient beings together accomplish the path to Buddhahood.